Thank you for the lovely introduction. The climate crisis has come to the point that we as the youth cannot stand by anymore and watch from the sidelines. We have rolled up our sleeves and are tackling this crisis head on. Good afternoon, my name's Almaaz and I'm a grade 9 student at Rodin School in Johannesburg. I've had the great privilege of being involved in policy on a provincial and national level to further the youth climate agenda. In South Africa, we're relatively organized with a few institutions seeking the opinions of young people. Through Youth at SAIA, we have youth model parliaments where we work together to submit draft resolutions tackling issues such as food security, climate change, and COVID-19 in South Africa. These documents then go forward to our legislatures to be included in policies and regulations. I find this is so critical because it's available to youth from all walks of life in South Africa. We all come together with a common goal and share our ideas and often see these ideas play out in society. During the COVID-19 lockdown, these events were taken online, and we saw so many different people logging on and participating from different parts of South Africa, whereas normally we could only interact with youth from our districts. I think this is a testament to the many opportunities online platforms create if utilized properly. But it also shed a light on the digital divide in South Africa. I realize that while it is great that digital platforms enable us to reach a broader community and a broader audience, but if everyone can't access the digital economy, there's an entire community that we lose. So even while solving climate change, we have to consider these very important social issues. We have to keep in mind the intersectionality of many of the problems we face. I'm of the opinion that if we adopt a holistic approach to solving the climate change, we will solve many of the world's pressing issues. We can't talk about climate change without talking about poverty alleviation, the environment, social injustice, and health, to name a few. Governments especially don't provide regulation that is multilateral and don't inspire people to change. Regulators have great plans and laws, but implementation very often fails. Holding companies and individuals, and in some cases even their own government, to their own standards are lacking. Regulators often regulate companies, which is very good, but sometimes they've never even worked in a company before. What we need in terms of regulation is for everyone to have a voice and a say, because we have to recognize, especially with climate change, that a one-size-fits-all strategy will never work. Some days it feels like solving the climate crisis with the different agendas of all the different countries is a bit like herding flies. We need to all work towards one common goal. A solid and concise set of SDGs with targets have been set out, and we have a climate change agenda. We just need to work towards this agenda and help one another. I've also been afforded the opportunity to work with regulators on an international level. I was part of a panel in the EU Climate Diplomacy Week, where EU ambassadors, European diplomats, government officials, and other large stakeholders all came together to discuss our relatively different opinions on climate change for a full week, and we discussed at length these different issues so that we could come to a final agreement on our climate change agenda. The key ideas that were carried forward was the need for a just green recovery, which I'm glad to say the youth influenced massively. This event culminated in a closing ceremony where I represented the youth opinion on how a just green recovery is poised for success. For example, how do you close a factory that's polluting the environment, but whole communities' livelihoods depends on the wages that it provides? The solution to this problem is regulation with implementable solutions so that these businesses can transform themselves into greener businesses, all the while still playing a vital role in their community. These are the sort of things big businesses in South Africa are looking at. In March this year, I was part of a meeting facilitated by NBI, which is the National Business Initiative, with companies such as Anglo, Engine, Sasol, Toyota, Eskom, And these businesses, who are some of the biggest polluters in South Africa, are starting to acknowledge climate change as a real threat. They're starting to prioritize a just green transition when changing their business models. And in some cases, they're even looking at climate change as an opportunity. But conversing with the different individuals representing their companies, I found it incredibly difficult. I think this is mainly because change is more often than not forced upon them through policies that do good for the community and environment. Their willingness to change doesn't come intrinsically. And I can trace these issues back to the education system and company values. Companies need to include environmentalism and social responsibilities in their company values and reward this behavior. I may be biased seeing that I'm a high school student, but I strongly believe that the education system can be utilized as a tool to prevent most of the problems we face today in the future. There's been innovation in almost every sector except for the education system. And this is something we need to consider and change when solving the climate crisis. Specifically in the context of South Africa, we need to narrow the inequality within the education system. I believe we need a universal basic curriculum to be implemented at a national and international level, underpinned by the No Child Left Behind ideology. Reviving the education system is very simple. For example, children should be encouraged to do simple yet effective tasks like cleaning their classrooms after the school day is over. These are very basic acts, but it teaches you respect for your environment and to take responsibility for your actions, which are very simple values, but it's exactly what we need at the top level. Small things like this make a big difference. This past April, I have had the amazing opportunity to be a panelist on the launch of CAP 2030. As Dr. Anthony Costello and Dr. Marina Romanello said, CAP 2030 stands for Children in All Policies, and the organization is based on a research paper by the WHO Lancet Commission that gives an in-depth view on the threats facing children, such as social media, advertising, climate change, and many more. They argue that no country in the world has done enough to consider children in policy. And I'm in complete agreement with CAP 2030. I believe that when we bring youth perspectives into discussions on policies, we inevitably have a greater focus on long-term issues, which are often existential. For example, artificial intelligence and climate change. If we had to consider the future of children's rights, we must realize that children still aren't true citizens. And I believe that is something we need to change. Children must be given a vote. Obviously, this can be a very controversial position, and I don't have the answers to how we can implement such a political system. But I do believe it is something we need to debate at length. If my vote counts, our government will have to listen to my voice in a meaningful way. The youth in South Africa are doing great work in crafting our first South African Youth Climate Action Plan, also known as the YCAP. It will make up our National Climate Action Plan and Implementation Strategy. We are under stringent timelines to finalize both the YCAP framework and our implementation plan by September this year in time for COP26. The youth of South Africa often submit declarations and resolutions to the government tackling our main issues, such as food security, racial injustice, and climate change. South Africa has a proud heritage of youth activism, starting way back in 1976. And we have realized that the youth have a strong and powerful voice. The fact that big companies are targeting us with their advertising, this must mean that they want something from us and we have some level of high influence. We know that the climate crisis will only be solved if everyone channel their energy and work towards the same goal. That's why we've started a movement among the youth in South Africa to foster a culture change towards protecting our environment. One of our first steps was to organize and mobilize ourselves in a very orderly manner. The YCAP process began in April with discussions among a selected youth leadership program. When we, the youth, speak to one another, we speak simply and can make a very complex matter simple. I mean, we are children after all. This creates a sense of hope and unity, which is exactly what we need. Climate change is a very complex issue, And we have to create a message of unity and hope rather than only criticize and not encourage the so-called apocalypse paralysis. We are now moving into our planning and strategizing phase, and it teaches us so much. Climate change is thrusting us as youth to become very mature and not just criticize, but criticize in a constructive manner and offer solutions. One of the main aims of the YCAP is to make sure everyone has a voice in the final document and to uplift people from the grassroots level up into the implementation plan. For example, I'm the high school liaison for the YCAP, and I'm responsible for making sure all high school students from all socioeconomic backgrounds are included. One of the challenges we face is how do you get everyone's voices heard? We realized that the only way was to go on a roadshow and to teach people about climate change, because those that don't understand can't be leaders and they'll be followers and can't truly contribute to their futures. We have to make the structure simple and easy to understand. For example, we're planning to launch an initiative for school-based food gardens. And how do you get the simple message out that if you use artificial fertilizers, you degrade soil, plants can't grow, and this will be detrimental to our food security? I encourage everyone on the call today to check out the YCAP as we move into our drafting phase this year. What we see in the world today is that there are many people who have been left behind. I'm talking more specifically to the African countries and some parts of the Western world. This is something the youth are incredibly careful of. We will not fall prey to the same trap. There's a lesson to be learned here, and hence we are framing the Youth Climate Action Plan agenda with inclusive and diverse representation. Our experience as the youth in South Africa, and whenever I interact with my global peers, is one of optimism that we can solve the climate crisis. We just have to maintain the pressure on government and work hard at solving the climate crisis. Right now with climate change, we're just touching the surface. We're just doing the basic things. By just doing the basic things, we can improve our planet immensely. But there's a whole new world of possibilities that awaits us once we've solved the climate crisis. We could open up whole new fields of science on our quest for a healthier planet. That's what I'm looking forward to. I really hope you enjoyed my talk and it was worth your time. I hope I gave you some food for thought and that you have a newfound appreciation for the great work the youth are doing in South Africa. The future is bright, and this is only the beginning. Thank you.